Hi and welcome to the weekly market update. It's Tuesday the 24th of September 2013. Okay, so the big event and the large focus last week was obviously the Fed's decision not to taper on Wednesday evening. They decided to continue with their $85 billion a month in quantitative easing. And this largely took the markets by surprise. They've largely been factoring in around an expectations for around a 10 to 15 billion taper from the Fed. And when we didn't see this last Wednesday, we saw a large spike in stocks and also in fixed income and a large sell-off in the dollar. So that's really sort of remained the focus with the markets as well. Now sort of on edge about when we might possibly see this taper. We don't usually see a press conference from the Fed following its decisions, apart from every quarter. So people are now wondering, will we have to wait till December till we have another meeting with a press conference following, or alternatively, is that too close to Bernanke's before he resigns? So maybe it could even be put off before we see the next Fed governor come in. So there's a lot of questions now about when exactly we will see the Fed taper. We've also had some of the Federal Reserve members coming out and speaking on the wires. We had Bullard come out and say that he's quite hawkish comments, that he would still regard that we should still regard October as a live meeting, and that the Fed could taper in the October if they wanted to. So this sort of really set questions in the market. Then alternatively, we've had Dudley and Lockhart from the Fed coming out with more dovish comments, trying to counter those ones from Bullard. So being a bit more dovish and saying that we may be holding off on QE. It's sort of data dependent. We need to see some better health in the US economy before we do see this taper take place. Otherwise, over the weekend, a big part of news was from the German elections, which concluded on Sunday. We saw Merkel take a good majority of the vote. She got a larger majority than expected, so she continues, to hold control over the government. However, we did see one of her coalition partners slip down and not gain their 5% majority to get that space in government. Therefore, the question largely is what sort of coalition is going to form within the German government. It's questions now, will Merkel's party have to team with the SPD or maybe even the Greens, but it seems like there's going to be quite a lot of negotiating to be done, and this could take weeks, so we'll keep an eye out for what they're saying there and what we might see, but probably unlikely to see a decision this week or maybe even next on the coalition that we will see from Germany. Obviously a good victory for Merkel and positive for the euro and also for Europe. Otherwise, from Europe, we've seen Draghi out on the wires yesterday, getting some attention from his comments when he keeps talking around this idea of the LTRO. Comments still coming out on there that there could be that the ECB could undertake another LTRO should it be needed within the market. So these comments definitely getting some attention, and people really questioning whether we could see another LTRO within Europe, especially with the attention around the tightening of the credit. We've seen it slip to just over 2 billion now, and a few months ago Draghi did outline that the 2 billion in excess liquidity was quite a prominent mark around sort of when we could see sort of a hiking in rates. So people really paying attention here, and if we do see this extra LTRO because the credit is needed in Europe, that would certainly get some attention. Otherwise, in terms of data that we saw out yesterday, it was a day for PMI data. We saw PMI manufacturing and services for much of Europe. Manufacturing actually coming in on the softer side, but we did see some good numbers for the services, so a bit of a mixed picture there for Europe. And in the afternoon, we saw the US PMI manufacturing market preliminary reading, that actually coming in a little bit softer than expected. So, as I said, a little bit mixed picture, weakness in manufacturing globally, but some positivity for the services in Europe. In terms of data that we've seen this morning, we got the IFO data out of Germany, so sentiment surveys sort of split into three. In terms of business climate, we came in slightly softer than expected. The current assessment also came in weaker than last, and then we've seen the expectations reading as well, and that's actually coming in stronger. So people, a little bit pessimistic on what we're seeing right now on the current assessment, but good sentiment going forward. Otherwise, we saw the Netherlands GDP saw a slight improvement there. It revised from -0.1 from -0.2. From the UK, we had BBA mortgage applications, those coming in really strong, and actually the highest level for those since December 2009. Some good data there for the UK. So in terms of where that sort of leaves us trading, we've got the FTSE around the 65-60 mark. We've seen that sort of coming off for the start of this week. For the Dow, we've got it around 15,400. Obviously saw that spike on the back of the comments from or the decision from the Fed and the press conference following last week, and we've seen sort of retracing just slightly, continue to retrace just steadily back from those high levels. In terms of currencies, we've got the Eurodollar at one spot 34.82. We saw that sort of rising this morning. Then on the back of the IFO data, saw some falling for the euro. And then for cable, we've got one spot 59.92. In terms of commodities, looking at gold around the 13.16 mark. It's been pretty range bound for the start of this week. And then for the crude oil, we've got it around 103.16. Okay, so for the rest of the week, what we're looking at data-wise, this afternoon from the US, we've got the Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index. Again, following the manufacturing reading we saw yesterday, this one's sort of getting a little bit less attention and expecting it to come in a little bit softer. We've also got consumer confidence from the US this afternoon, expecting that slightly softer as well, 80 from 81.5 last. Into tomorrow from Europe, we've got quite a few confidence and sentiment surveys. That seems to be sort of a theme for the week. German and Italian consumer confidence, and then French business confidence. From Spain, we get PPI data, so some inflation numbers there. For the UK, it's really quiet in terms of data this week, but Wednesday brings the publication. It's the statement of the meeting of the financial conduct, so just a statement from the Bank of England there. From the US, we've got mortgage applications coming in at 11.2. We saw, hoping 11.2% last. The prior number to that was quite weak at negative 13.5. So saw some improvement last, and hoping to see that continue. The big number for the US on Wednesday is going to be the durable goods numbers. We saw a very weak number last time, negative 7.4. This time we're only looking for negative 0.2, and hopefully the ex-transportation numbers will actually come in positive for the US there. We've also got new home sales, expecting those. We saw some weak numbers last there, so keep an eye there. Into Thursday, we've got French consumer confidence and Italian retail sales from Europe, and then we get the Eurozone M3 money supply data. As I said, credit is largely being watched in Europe. Seeing a real tightening of credit, and the ECB very concerned about this. Obviously, the chatter of the LTRO. So interesting to see what we get from the M3 numbers, to see what we're seeing in terms of liquidity across Europe. From the UK, we get the Q2 GDP final reading, expecting that at 0.7%. And then from the US in the afternoon, we've got the usual initial jobless and continuing claims. Seen some good initial jobless numbers over the past couple of weeks, and hoping for that to continue. We've also get their final Q2 GDP reading for the US, expecting that, the consensus largely for a 2.6 reading from the 2.5 we saw last. We might just see a slight upward revision there. Also get some PCE data, expecting that just in line with last, and some pending home sales data also. Finally, into Friday, we've got the French GDP Q2 final reading. See that theme of the week here, expecting that just to stay the same as last at 0.5%. We'll also get some EU sentiment data for the Eurozone as a whole, that is, and looking for slight improvements across the board there. German CPI data, inflation from the Consumer Price Index, flat month over month expected, and 1.5% year over year. And then we'll get that LTRO reading from Europe at 11 o'clock. We saw a good repayment last week, a surprisingly good one. We'd seen sort of quite small numbers, and it went up to over 7 billion for the repayment last Friday. So again, it's all to do with that liquidity in Europe, so all eyes will be on that on Friday. From the UK, we've got Lloyd's Business Barometer and Index of Services. So like I said, probably nothing too market moving for the UK, just some little bits of data, bits and pieces. From the US Friday afternoon, we've got personal income and personal spending data, expecting both of those to improve slightly. That also brings along with it the PCE deflator data, and the University of Michigan sentiment survey in the afternoon, expecting that slightly better at 78 from 76.8 last. Another thing to bear in mind this week is we've got the Troika back into Greece, assessing the situation there and whether they will be getting more funding, whether they will need more funding. There's been talks of maybe another bailout, another 2 bailouts. So interesting to see how that pans out over the weeks. Expecting them to probably wanting more austerity there, but we've seen protests arising there from the cuts that they have been making, particularly public sector workers, really making some efforts there in Greece, but it still seems that they might need more money. to come. So interesting to see how that pans out, if they will be granted extra aid. Otherwise, we've got a lot of speakers out this week. As I already mentioned, we've had some Fed speakers out already. We also had Draghi yesterday, so expected to continue into the week. We've got some Bank of England speakers this afternoon. Bank of England's been, and also Tucker. So we might get some sound bites from them on the forward guidance in the UK. But otherwise, a lot of Fed speakers, a lot of the ECB speakers, expecting the ECB to maybe focus on possible new LTROs, and the Fed's obviously going to be talking about or looking out for comments on clues on the tapering, when it might happen, if it's going to happen, how much we may be expecting to see of the taper. So probably the data this week probably isn't going to be the most market moving aspect. It's probably going to be the speakers that we're going to see throughout the week, so that's what we need to keep an eye on. Okay, that's it for this week. As usual, any feedback much appreciated. Thanks.